So this tip is very easy, right? We've got a clip over here, we've got a clip over there, right? Now, if I change the colors here in the color tab, so let's just make it very obvious that I've changed this. And then I play this clip, I see the color grade is not being applied to the second clip, which means I would need to do that manually, right? Now, with this clip selected, let me undo that and go back. The most easy way to do this is to just search the adjustment clip, drop it onto your timeline, and that allows you to change something on this clip that you can extend to the next clip, for instance. Now, this could be a transition as well if you want to, because you can change the size to anything that you like so. And now if I change the colors here, so I go back to the color tab, I drag this up again to make it obvious, and then I play this clip, you see that the same color grade is being applied to this clip, and that saves you a lot. So this is a great tip as well, right? So if you have a clip that you want to cut down, right? So this is someone riding a bull, and eventually he's going to fall off, obviously. Now let's say I don't want the entire clip to last, right? I just want a small part just before he gets kicked off. I could use the I for the in point. Then I can go to the part where he's off, and I can use the O. And now if I drag this onto the timeline, you will see that we see our clip and the audio track, right? Of the part that we have selected. If we select this again, we can also just select the clip, and we can obviously also just select the audio, but that will be useless in this case, right? So that's a very easy way, rather than just dragging the entire clip on your timeline and then having to cut it yourself. So let's say you have a lot of clips in your video bin, right? And you want to use certain parts. You need to make sure that you select your clip, go up here, go to Live Media Preview. And the reason for that is because if you have a lot of videos in your video bin, you sometimes just want to scroll through them to see what they contain, right? And this prevents you from having to double click every clip individually to see what's going on there, right? And if I know like, oh, I want to use this, I can just go up here, and then what we just learned a minute ago, I and O, drag and drop this onto the timeline, and that saves us a lot of time, right? So we have these two clips, right? And it just cuts from one to the other. So we need to use a transition for this to make sure it looks a bit better, right? We can just find ourselves a transition that we like. So in this case, let's click the fusion transitions. Let's do the camera shake, drag and drop it onto the videos. Now, if you're not able to place it in between the two video clips, then what you need to do is that you need to make sure that you drag this inwards a bit, and this as well, so that it doesn't have the end of the clip or the start of the clip, and that will allow you to drag and drop this onto the clips, right? Now, if we play this, we see that through a camera shake, we move to the next clip. Now, let's say you want to change something within this transition. You click it, and then you have all the options here in the inspector tab that you can change, right? Now, once you're done changing them to the desired values, you can go up here, right mouse button, and then click Create Transition Preset. You can give it a name, preset manual, for instance. Click OK, and then you will see that the user one shows up here, camera shake preset manual, that contains all the settings that we've entered ourselves. So I wish I knew when I started this, right? So go up here and then fill in new project. Give that project the name template, right? I'm gonna click cancel because I already have one. Now I want some bins, so I always have a video folder, I always have an audio folder, and I always have an image folder, and I always have an image folder, and then within those folders I add a bin with the right mouse button, new bin, and I call this archive, right? I'm gonna do the same thing for the audio, so archive, and I'm gonna do the same thing for the image, right? New bin, archive. So this is basically the setup I have for every project, right? Now let's add in a timeline. So I'm gonna add in a timeline bin. And then within the timeline bin, I'm gonna create a new timeline. I'm gonna call this timeline 1. I'm gonna make sure I'm using the project settings, which if you want to know, you can find up here. So right now, let's change this to 25 frames per second. Click save, change, we can't undo that. Right mouse button, timeline, create new timeline, use project settings, create. So now we have our timeline. Now, why is this important, right? Because we are creating a template. So we can add a video track if we want to. We can also add in audio tracks. So add track, stereo. Then we've got another stereo track. Now let's say in your projects, you always have the first track being your A-roll or your talking head or whatever you want to call it. And then here you have the music, right? Now with clicking this, let's say you always up your level by 5 and you want to use voice isolation I always use 75 because that gives the most natural sound. And for the audio, we know that we always set it to -35, regardless of the audio that we have. So whether or not it's a music track or whether or not it's an SFX, right? That means that if you now import a video into your video bin, so let's do that, import media, and I select that clip and I now drag and drop it onto my timeline, I see that I now have an audio track here, which has the following. It's got a volume of 5 and voice isolation of 75. So that means within this clip itself, I don't have to change the volume and the voice isolation because that's something that's already been done standard. Now, if I add in a music track here, right mouse button, import media, navigate to the folder where you have your music, just add it here and then drag it onto your timeline. You will now see that we've got a -35. So if I play this clip, so if I were to play this clip, you would hear this very low and then this a bit higher, right? Now, before you start working with this, it's very important to make sure you delete everything. So delete the video and let's delete the audio as well. So now we've got ourselves a blank template, right? One that we use all the time. So we go to File, Save Project As. Let's call this template in our case. Let's click Save. And then every time you start a project, you go to the template one first, right? Which is empty. And then you go to File, Save Project As, give it your project name. So let's say this is the template tutorial video. Then you click Save. You see that it's changing up here. And now I can work in this as a new project with my template still intact. And this saves you so much time